we're not going to make payroll next week for 300 employees, literally. If you have the opportunity in one moment to make more than you would in a lifetime of working that company, you have to at least consider it. Where your competitor goes and gets the brand new Raptor or whatever, and he's driving around and you're still driving around in a Prius, which I drove around in for a long time. I'm not necessarily the cheapest, but I'm making their job easier. They love me to death, right? I've had guys that have been offered $5+ more an hour, which is significant, right, than what I'm giving them, that have stuck with me, even though I couldn't match that pay, because they felt like they're a part of something. And so it creates almost this loyalty.
The reason for success in the entrepreneurial space is not because of the destination. It's because you like the race. It's because you love the race. You just so happen to enjoy the destination and the finish line. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is Ricardo Torres with the Blue Collar Millionaire Podcast, coming to you 283,000 members strong, continuing to own and operate their businesses. Today, we've got a special guest with us. It's Jason Bowen with Integrity Core. A little bit on Jason, but before I go on that, I had an opportunity to meet with Jason a couple of months ago in Atlanta, who talked a little bit on how he up and came in terms of business, his success. And it'd be remiss of us to not have someone like Jason, down to earth, real, authentic person, talk a little bit about kind of what he's done and just add some value to the listeners today. Jason's a blue collar entrepreneur who spent over 2 decades building, scaling, and exiting companies in the restoration, underground utilities, and the traffic control space. Jason, man, thank you so much for coming out today. I really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah, Ricardo, thanks, man. It's an honor, pleasure to be with you guys. I had a great time with you guys in Atlanta, really learned some stuff, and kind of felt for the first time I've been a part of different masterminds and stuff like that. I really felt like, man, these are my people. Like, I like these guys, like they're running in the same lanes and running after the same stuff that I am. So it was a pleasure, and I'm excited to, just be a little deeper part of what you guys got going on and share whatever wisdom and knowledge I can to help for the guys along here.
Really appreciate it. When you find that tribe, it clicks and it makes sense. And that's how I felt with Blue Collar Millionaire for a long time now. And look, at the end of the day, I mean, it's 2026. There's a lot of questions out there on how different people are running their business. You see, if you were to rewind 10 or 15 years, things looked a lot differently, but now everything is out in the open. So it gives us a kind of a unique opportunity to ask those questions and to see other people's success. So I'll go ahead and I'll just start with that. If you don't mind, give us a little bit about your background, kind of where you come from, where you were raised, Jason, and how that got you into the transition for the entrepreneurial world, man.
Yeah, man. So my upbringing was very different. We had, Southern California. So started there, raised in a Christian home, worked hard, like had chores, feeding the chickens, chopping wood, like doing all that stuff. Not what you would maybe typically think of Southern California, but that's what it was. Yeah. Learned hard work from my dad. He had his own business and ran hard, and I watched him do that. And I had, hard things to do myself. We were pretty involved with church. Church was about a block away, and I was very heavily involved there. I played drums and did different things there. Got involved in mission stuff. My parents built like a mission down in Mexico, learned to work hard and kind of serve people in a different way with that. And there was a lot of that stuff that really shaped kind of who I am. Business wise, I actually started off, I was going to be a youth pastor. I went to Bible college and did that whole thing. And somewhere along that line, making $500 a week with a wife and a kid wasn't quite enough in SoCal.
Yeah.
As you can imagine. And so really from there, got opportunity to step into some construction and things like that and learn some more trades. I was always good working hard and good with my hands, and so stepped into that. And there was just pretty quickly heavy almost favor on my life just in those areas. So that's kind of how things started.
Okay, right on. Yeah, when you think SoCal, you don't think helping out with the chickens or helping out in the backyard or farm. You think, I would have thought you were on the beach surfing every day.
I know. I did get to the beach once in a while. We get up to the mountains sometimes. But yeah, we actually had an acre up along the mountainside and kind of did those old school chores, man. It was good for you,
Yeah, that's awesome. I've got 2 daughters, and one of the things I tried to do with them early was introduce them to hard work and let that be a norm. Because let me tell you, these iPad babies now, or iPhone, whatever you want to call them, right? It's like what they want to do is content creation, but they don't want to work hard. But it's actually now, in my opinion, this is my opinion, Ricardo's opinion, I think that there's a lot of money to be made in the hardworking scene because content creation is so saturated now.
Oh, 100%. And I totally agree. Like the kids that are being raised without having to do anything hard, like the world is going to slap them and there's no way around it.
Okay, so that was a little bit of your upbringing. Did you go to high school in Cali, any college, anything after that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So let's see, high school in SoCal. I did do college. Initially, I just went after like associates. I didn't really know what I wanted to do early on. I had done a bunch of different stuff, but I didn't know what I was going to do. First job in high school was a gazebo company doing woodworking, things like that. Kind of started my first business at that point. I took a line of the gazebo company and they asked me to take it and kind of build it out. So I started doing bird feeders, oddly enough, and built
like
kind
you
of
were
a good little
making them?
business. I was making them, man, yeah, from scratch. And I would sell them back to this gazebo company and then just kind of turn that into my first little enterprise out of my mom's garage. But did that for a while. I did college, just like associates type college. I didn't even finish that. And then from there, like I was saying, I went into Bible college. I was going to be a pastor, youth pastor, something like that, missions. My grandparents were missionaries. It was always just something that was big in my life. And so that was kind of the plan. But once I got through that, worked at a church, I planted a church, was the youth pastor at the church, did all that, and then started doing construction, started my first construction company. And then from there, that was all in SoCal. From there, just kind of built the first legitimate company, I would call it, and learned a lot of hard lessons.
Tell us a little bit about, so did you start off as a W-2 or a 1099? Were you a subcontractor? What was that initial role and what was the impetus for you to transition to the ownership side of things? How did that play out for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, first job was at an actual company like that was 16. And it was that gazebo company. I got hired right out of wood shop, right at school. W-2. And just learn different things, was always willing to work hard, work overtime, whatever I had to do to get stuff done. Dad instilled in me, parents instilled in me like a hard work ethic, right? And then I took over and started doing their bird feeders in-house at the gazebo company. And did that for maybe 6 months. And then they kind of decided maybe it was cheaper. Now knowing, right, like understanding a little bit more about business, they probably saw it was cheaper if they just like 1099 me. And I sold them back to them kind of thing, right? And so that's what I did. I mean, I'm 17 years old, 16, 17 years old, and I'm got this little enterprise in my mom's garage. And, that was the start, man.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so walk us through, so you had mentioned briefly kind of the youth pastor realm and the transition out of that. It, especially in SoCal, I can imagine that not paying the bills at that level because, California, it's just a little different than most other states. But
it is.
Do you think that your original kind of motivation, was it more financially driven or was it more freedom of your time, doing what not that you didn't love that, because I've met you before and I can tell there's that passion that you have. What was that motivation behind that transition? Because these are two totally different, industries, if you will.
Yeah, very different. I would say that there's initially the youth pastor stuff was hard. It wasn't working out the way that I thought it would. Again, family, marriage, son, right? All that stuff is hard. And then making little amounts of money in Southern California is even harder. It, multiplies it. And so I think initially there was just a financial. So I would do the youth pastor stuff and I would do part-time construction. And then again, there was a lot of just kind of favor on my life as the construction stuff started going and building. And so I got more and more involved in the construction side of things and switched over to full-time construction within this company. And probably within 6 months to a year, I mean, main owner, he just kind of stopped coming in. Like I was handling hiring, firing. I was doing estimates. I was doing the actual work. I was doing, customer relations, invoicing. Like we were just kind of handling all of it. And I mean, I'm 21, something like that. Okay. And so again, there was just a lot of kind of favor on the stuff that I was doing. And so as I saw success in that way, I was like, okay, like this is something that I could run after and chase after. I like the hard work. Like, sometimes it was a restoration company. So you're doing, the mold, the floods, the fires, the sewage cleanup, like all the nasty stuff that nobody wants to do. Right. 100%. But I was always willing just to go after it and work hard. And so that kind of established and turned that into something. And then within maybe a year after that or so, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go do this on my own. And so pursued the contractor's license, did all the licensing, the bonding, the insurance, all the junk that you got to go through to actually establish a business, especially in Southern California. And then started that first kind of legitimate company.
So many times I think as entrepreneurs, we want to have the next great idea. You see, Uber, DoorDash, these huge companies, these huge conglomerates that came up, they coded a certain software program or whatever. But so many times I think we're missing the boat with one, what does opportunity look like that's right in front of you? You had an owner that you worked for that was going more absent over a period of time. For all intents and purposes, that was an opportunity to be seized. Most people don't see it that way. And then I think the second piece that I think resonates with me, and I think a lot of folks listening, is you can mimic success. And if you do it a little bit better, you might be a little bit more successful. So yeah, I think that's huge to see that there was an opportunity. You stepped up to the plate and then decided to kind of transition to doing it on your own. I presume that the foundations of you starting your company, were the bedrock of that were your lessons learned kind of playing in the sandbox, if you will, previously with the other company. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, all those, from the very first company to, that moment, it was all learned experiences, right? It was like, oh, I'm going to take this, I'm going to build off of that. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it is just learning. And if you can take those things and apply them to current situations, you're starting kind of a leg up, from everybody else. And so I really tried to do that. I've always been one that's like, man, I want to just continue learning. I don't ever want to stop learning, even to this day. Like if I can find something new or something within my industry that I can add to adjacent verticals, stuff like that we've talked about, right? Like those things are massive for me because I enjoy the new, the learn, the how do I improve my skills? How do I refine my niche even?
100%. Yeah. Okay. So that was around 2021. Give us a bit of a timeline. How many years ago roughly that took place?
Oh man, I'm 47. So.
Okay. All right. So
old.
So yeah. So, so like, okay, 26-ish years. So that was like early 2000s, right?
Yeah, about early 2000s. I graduated in 96. I was in like a band that traveled around for a little bit. And then I went to Bible college, youth pastor, first business. So yeah, probably around 2000, somewhere around that.
All right. Okay. So for the listeners, I'm going to bracket. So this is kind of the beginning stages of things to recent exit from a company with a lucrative payout. Give us a Reader's Digest on how a blue collar entrepreneur starts small and scales to the level that you scale at. What did that journey look like? And how did people, processes, and solving these issues contribute to your success over a period of time?
Yeah, people, processes, and systems. Yeah, I mean, look, like starting early on, I just went into, I needed a job, right? It's like, I'm decent at this, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it on my own. I never thought that it would ever turn into anything near what we've built today. I just went out and I knew I could work hard and I knew I could make money to provide for my family and, hopefully provide a good life.
Yeah.
As things grew and accelerated and I continued to learn and stepped into other industries. I mean, that first company was the restoration company. We expanded that into general construction. So we wouldn't just do the restoration, we'd do the general construction. We'd rebuild the units, drywall, cabinets, flooring, all the stuff. That eventually got to a place I brought some people in around me that were really running that. And I'm 23 years old. I had a lot of time. And so I was looking for other things. That pushed me into underground utility space. And so got into that space, same thing, something I knew nothing about. I didn't know anything about the colors of the lines on the ground. The blue was water, the green was sewer, the red was power, the orange was telecom. I didn't know anything about that stuff, but I wanted to learn. And so I bought into this company, was buying this guy out. He would teach me stuff. And that grew in Southern California. That's what eventually pushed me out to Colorado. Our largest customer out here in Colorado, or our largest customer in California, won the largest CenturyLink Lumen contract in Colorado. And from there, I had to move out to Colorado and spent a year traveling back and forth from California to Colorado. My family was in California still. And that started building that underground utility company. That then turned into traffic control, into fiber splicing, into all the adjacent verticals that we then built to where we were somewhat of a turnkey type solution.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, our traffic control company was kind of a good niche that we had found. And so we looked to expand that into other areas. And so I connected with an old friend and he was out in Oregon. Portland at the time was, I think, the third fastest growing city in the nation. So we started pushing stuff out there within the traffic control space and the underground utility infrastructure space and really grew that to Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado, Arizona, Nebraska. So 5-6 states or so. And that was the company that we eventually scaled to the point where in end of 2024, we had that exit. So long road, lots of adjacent verticals that we kind of added to it, lots of hard lessons, man. I mean, just failure after failure, you know, losing it, like just all the stuff that you go through as a blue collar startup business.
Yeah, 100%. So this term adjacent verticals, man, let's dig into that a little bit. So how would you describe that to the listener of Blue Collar Millionaire, and how do they apply it to maybe something that they're doing, right? Are we talking a sister service that can be offered to enhance the customer experience? Tell us a little bit more about the adjacent vertical aspect of things.
Yeah. So when I say adjacent vertical, really what I'm looking at is a service within maybe the space that you're in that you can add that solves an additional need, right? Just to put it like super simple. So if you are, specifically a new plumbing company or something like that, and maybe you're adding sewer repairs or maybe you're adding drain clean outs or something like that.
Yeah.
Or
French
if you go a little,
drain, something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything like that. So for me specifically, right, we had the underground utility company. So we'd put in all the underground fiber optic lines for Verizon and AT&T and Comcast and CenturyLink and all those guys. And every day I was hiring traffic control companies to shut down the road, right? So we get in the road, we blow out a piece of asphalt. So you guys have seen the orange cones and the road with the heads, those kind of things. So we hired those guys to come out every single day and to shut down the road so that we could do our work, right? It wasn't part of our work, but we had to have them to do our work. And so we did that for a while. And eventually that company, and this is where I think there's opportunity to your point about the restoration company, there's opportunity that was there. This company started kind of showing up late. They weren't giving us great service, screwing up on the invoicing, like all this stuff. And so eventually I was like, man, like, I'm just going to do this myself. So I bought a truck and I hired a guy and said, hey, I need you to start setting this up. And we'd do that. And we had maybe 10 crews at the time. So I hired a guy in a truck and he would set up maybe 2 of those. I'd still have to hire 8 of them, but I had room to grow. And so as we had finances, I would grow, expand, add a guy, add a truck, add a guy, add a truck, to the point where we were really servicing my entire company within that traffic control space, all of my own in-house drills and construction guys. And then from there, we kind of had a good little niche. And so I looked at expanding beyond just my company. So I'm talking to my other contractor buddies, the other underground utility guys. Hey, can we do traffic control for you guys too? You guys know these guys suck over here, so why don't you use us instead, right? And and kind of stepped into that space where we started asking for more work. I think one of the keys to even my success, if I look back, is I've always been really good at kind of networking and establishing relationships and stuff. And so I always had really good relationships, even with competitors. Like we would just help each other out if something happened and they needed help or they needed, hey, this thing broke down. Can you come help us get this out? And whatever. We'd be helpful. We just build relationship. And so when it came down to expanding that adjacent vertical, traffic control, it was really just an ask to almost a friend, hey man, would you mind if we picked up some of your traffic control too? And so just expanded it at that point. Other adjacent verticals, we added concrete and asphalt. Again, within my space of underground utilities, every day we're blowing out a sidewalk or blowing out a piece of asphalt on the street to put in this underground fiber optic line, multiple, all over the place. And so to finish the job, we had to hire a concrete and asphalt company to come back in and repair our stuff and all that. So eventually I was like, man, we should just do this ourselves. And then we would hire a fiber splicer to connect the fibers into the building that we were running the fiber to. And then we'd have to do aerial fiber where they go up on the poles and they run across, the street to another building or something like that. So we added that. It was just this very natural, I would say, just adjacent growth to the point where, again, like I've said, we added enough that we became almost turnkey. And at that point, honestly, that's almost a key for us where we really saw massive growth, because now I could go, again, I was great with networking, great with relationships. And so my prime contracts with CenturyLink and Lumen and these guys, I would be able to go to them, instead of saying, hey, let me have your underground utility work, I would say, hey, just give me the job, the whole job, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to give it back to you 100% complete. And so instead of them, all of it, way easier for them. So instead of them having to give it to 8 different contractors, the concrete guy and the aerial guy and the splicer guy and the underground utility guy and the traffic control guy and all these, instead of that, right, they're just giving me the entire job and I'm handling it. So I'm making their job easier. They love me to death, right? And I'm not necessarily the cheapest, but I'm making their job easier. And so 100%. That really helped us grow and scale. So the adjacent vertical thing is massive, man. If you can, within your realm, add those adjacent services, it's just a bigger piece of a bigger pie.
Yeah. And thanks for breaking that down, because I know it's a term that's used a lot. And I think it presents itself in different ways to different businesses. Either it just hits you over the head. I walked into my dry cleaner one day and we saw a big area rug there, and I thought, why aren't we cleaning carpets? And so
I love that.
It's textile, you're cleaning something, why not clean a different type of garment? So sometimes it hits you over the head, and other times it's a customer that is asking for it, and over a period of time you continue to hear that and you're like, all right, this is happening too often, we should probably respond. Let me ask you this: when you scaled and offered these different services to make your business more vertically integrated, did you buy out competitors, or was this organic growth from your company?
Yeah, it was organic growth, but what I did, maybe a little different approach. I think now at this point, and even with some of my current companies that I'm scaling, we are looking at acquisitions. Yeah. Because it can be, I wouldn't say it's always, it can be an easier way to acquire that market share.
Yep.
When I did it, if it was an industry that I could figure out, so say for example, traffic control, it's not rocket science. Most of the time you're following like an engineered plan that somebody gives to you and you just set it up exactly like they show you, right? Not rocket science. You've got a guy in a truck, the guy has to be certified, all that kind of stuff. And so we just added that fairly easily. But when it came to fiber splicing, for example, I didn't know anything about fiber other than put it in the pipe. That's it, man. I don't know how to connect it. I don't know how to light it up. I don't even know how it works, right?
Yeah.
Like it was just the same. So what I would do is I would go out and find a guy who people would consider an expert in that niche, right? And I'd start having conversations with them about, maybe they were working for another company, maybe they had their own company, whatever it was, but I'd start having conversations with them about, hey, what would it look like for you to come over and work with us, work with me? And so from there, what I did, and some of this was successful, some of it just wasn't, just to be honest. But I would take a guy that was an expert in that field. I would apply kind of my business expertise along with my relationships and network and stuff like that. And I would start a new company that was this adjacent vertical. And again, most of the time I would own majority, but I would bring them in. I would give them some equity in the company. So they were now an owner, right? And I would help them through the relationships and the networks and the jobs that I already had to kind of scale this company. So again, increasing the size of that piece of the pie. And we saw some great success with some of that stuff. Some of these guys would step into those opportunities and just take them for all that they were, right? And they would grow and expand and go after new contracts, and companies would do great. Other ones, they would get put into a situation that is almost like they weren't really ready for the opportunity, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so they'd step into it, they'd do really good for a little bit, and then they'd decide they wanted the brand new lifted rimmed out F350, whatever it was, right? And they'd go and start spending money and trying to enjoy the good life right now instead of really building a company, right? I think we talked about that a little bit, but
yeah. Lifestyle creep is a thing, and business owners feel it, right? Like you begin to write off certain things and expense certain items that can bite you in the butt. And I know I'm doing a little foreshadowing here with PE and what they look at, because I know that they need to make sure that the books are tight. What type of a business owner were you, Jason? Were you a business owner that put all of the profits back into the business? Did you take some and enjoy your life? And how did you kind of handle that? Because I see a lot of folks that scale quickly, but if you don't continue to invest for the long term and play that game of chess versus checkers, I think it could bite you in the butt in the long run. So how did you kind of handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was the first part, like I did not touch the money, which man, it's hard. I'm just going to, when your competitor, goes and gets the brand new, Raptor or whatever, and he's driving around and you're still driving around in a Prius, which I drove around in for a long time. There's a little bit of humbling that goes on there, right? Yeah. Which is healthy. But I was one of the ones that would put 95+% of the profits right back into the company. I mean, so much so, and these are things that when I look back, I don't 100% know that I would do them exactly like this. I might have been a little more balanced, but what it ends up doing is when you're throwing that much money in, for example, our traffic control company, right? They grew 20 to 30% year over year for 8 years straight. Like, ridiculous, right? But what that does is it affects two things massively. One, it affects your family because you're working your butt off, but you're not seeing a lot of reward for that, right? So my family, full disclosure, like we didn't do a vacation longer than like a 4-day weekend, 3-day weekend or whatever until probably the year before the exit. Wow. Which is, most people would say that's crazy, right? Like we had companies that were doing 30, 40, $50 million, but we didn't live the life. We still had nice things. We still had a nice house. We still had everything that we needed, but we just didn't do the lavish, big stuff until, kind of later on within business. And so there's sacrifices, right? That it's not just sacrifice on you as a business owner, it's sacrifice on your family and stuff like that. So that for sure affected things. The other thing, like, because we grew so much, I think there's like almost this mindset of like, you're growing so quick and so much that you're almost like, oh, there's always going to be enough financially, right? Within the business, because you're putting it all back in. And we had, if I'll share a quick story, we had this one season out in the Oregon, Washington area. They had an ice storm. So similar like what you guys just had in Florida, I think.
Touché.
Yeah, touché. And so they have this ice storm out there in Oregon, Washington, and it's bad. They have them every couple of years or so, but it rains and it freezes, and so all their telephone lines and all that kind of stuff literally just, they get an inch or so of ice and they all just start breaking. So the pulls, the road gets covered with a sheet of ice. Like it's just chaos. And so we at the time out there in Oregon, Washington, thanks to I had a phenomenal partner out there that was running stuff. We had a great contract with PG&E, Portland Gas and Electric, and we had a great contract with Asplund, who did the like the trees and stuff like that, tree service. And they kind of worked hand in hand, right? The tree company coming through and keeping the trees off the power lines and all that kind of stuff. Well, this ice storm hits and it shuts the city down. Like just shuts it down. And so we literally went into, and we had these 2 massive contracts. And at this point, we probably had maybe 200-300 employees in that market, right? And all of a sudden we go from, normal 40, 50-hour weeks or whatever to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for like 2-3 weeks straight. Like we are literally like business the guys are pulling. Yeah, business is a booming, man, right? The guys are pulling, 100-hour plus weeks. Like it's crazy. Everybody's exhausted, but everybody's making a lot of money. And we're looking at it like, oh my gosh, we just billed like this week, we just billed whatever it was, millions, right? And we're like, oh, this is awesome. Well, again, all of our money was going back into the business and into growth. And so we're not sitting on some big nest egg or something like that. Like we're still running, payroll's $400,000 a week. And, every week we're bringing in maybe $500,000 or something like that. And so we're not sitting on money, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden within those 1, 2, 3 weeks, payroll went from $400,000 a week to $750,000 a week, like that, like literally like overnight. Now, all these contracts are how often they get paid?
Yes.
60, 90 days, something like that, right? So now 90. All of a sudden we're, 90. So we're 2 weeks into this thing. Yeah, you could see exactly where it's going. We're 2 weeks into this thing and we're going, oh, shoot, like we're not going to make payroll next week for 300 employees, literally. So what does that do? It puts you in this spot where you're going like, oh my gosh, like there's no way you can go to a bank. Banks don't fund that quick. There's no way, like I'm not sitting on crazy capital. Like I said, all my money is just dumping right back into the company. Like I don't even know.
Line of credit, did you?
No, we didn't have a line of credit, which we were talking about that too. That's definitely one of my things I would recommend to these guys as they're growing businesses is get a line of credit. Just something that we didn't do, right? We were just dumping money back in. I don't even know at this point if I was actually taking a salary from this company, honestly. Like we were just dumping money in. And so we hit this point where payroll went from $400,000 to $700,000 a week. So, within 3-4 weeks, now our payroll just almost tripled, right? When we don't have money to make payroll. And so now we're going out to hard money lenders, right? And we're having conversations with these guys that are wanting 25, 30, 35%. Yes, bro.
Because they know they got you you're in a corner.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You can't go to a bank. No bank's going to fund that quick. Plus, your books at that point don't even really look good because all your money that comes in is going right back out. So they're not even going to loan you money. You're in a state of
desperation at this point. You got to go get a line of credit when you don't need it.
Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of the point to that. It's like, man, get it way before you need it. But yeah, so we have to go out and we have to borrow, gosh, man, I want to say $2 million hard money, 2.5 hard money. I mean, but it was either miss payroll to your 300 employees that had just worked 3 weeks straight of 100-hour plus weeks, or you just go out and you do it, right? Now, that was a hard season because basically your profit margin on that kind of work is 35-40% maybe. You're working overtime and all that stuff, so it bumps a little bit, but that's what you're paying now to your hard money lender. So all this hard work and all this energy that you just put into all this kind of stuff, and you're like, oh man, it's all just disappears, right? And so we were paying on that line or on that hard money man for probably 2 years, something, and all of our profits just were gone.
What?
So hard lessons.
Decision. So how'd you handle you got the hard money loan. What would have, I guess, your communication with your employees, and I guess this could go so many different ways because I have a secondary question to this, but so you didn't miss payroll in that case then, correct?
We did not miss payroll. We were actually at an executive retreat. So my executive ownership team was at a retreat doing planning and all this kind of stuff. And we realized we were going to miss payroll. And so we're like frantic trying to get this done. We're at this executive thing, planning out the future. And then we like stop and everybody focuses on trying to get
you got to deal with the fire
covered.
at hand.
Yeah, man. And we get payroll funded. They send us the money on the Thursday and covered payroll on the Friday, just by the skin of our teeth,
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. And for folks that aspire to be entrepreneurs, recognize that it's not always peaches and cream. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, man. And oftentimes, you know this better than I do, Jason, is you got to, Leaders Eat Last is a really good book, by the way, Simon Sinek, and leaders do eat last. You put your people first. And I'll go off briefly on a tangent here, but before I do so, give us an idea generally as to what top line revenue looked like for your companies at this time, at this stage of kind of your scale?
Yeah. So the biggest company at that point was the traffic company. We were probably doing like 15 to 20 across all the states. And so we had Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Colorado, Nebraska.
Got it.
Around there.
Okay.
But Oregon, Washington was definitely our largest. And that's the one that had that storm.
Got it.
And so, yeah, not massive, but big.
But getting
it's
there.
a big company. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. You posted something recently, man, that resonated with me, brother, and it got, a lot of interaction, and it's how you pay your employees. Give us a little bit of insight. I know a lot of business owners who are very frugal, man. They're very frugal because, as you know, you got your gross revenue right below it, cost of goods sold or your cost of labor, which different industries have different costs of labor. But if you can strike in a frugal manner up top, you can bolster your bottom line. How did you handle that as a business owner? And what did that mean for the level of employees and talent that you were able to retain? Because I know, and again, foreshadowing here, private equity is looking for an org structure that is sound and solid across the board. They don't want to see high levels of turnover. Can you talk a little bit about how you handled compensation for your employees and what that looked like for longevity?
Yeah, definitely. So I think early on, I've always been, people would be careful how I say this, like I've always been probably more generous than I should be. That's what maybe most people would say.
Yeah.
The people around me, at least, especially my wife.
That's good.
But I'm always a little more generous than most people are maybe. And so I'm typically going to pay a little higher than maybe what the market says.
Yeah.
I'm typically going to be the one, like I mentioned, I'm going to give up some equity to people that are higher players. I'm going to share in a piece of the pie, right? Specifically at the post you're referring to, I mentioned that I typically pay my guys an extra, $2, $3 an hour more, whatever it is, and then standard. And what that does is for me, at least what I've seen, is it creates this feeling that they're a part of something. And I don't get the, hey, Joe Schmo down the street just offered me an extra $1 an hour, so I'm putting in my notice, right? And that, look, within blue collar, like that is like an epidemic. Like some dude down the street offers you an extra $1 or $2 an hour, or offers you be able to take home a new truck or something like that. And all of a sudden they're jumping. And for me, I think I instinctively was always just a little more generous. But what I learned later on in business is it's actually like a principle that we've now applied to business that I think is a key, man, within blue collar specifically, meaning that as we pay our people a little bit more, number one, they're not jumping for the extra $1 an hour, extra $2 an hour, extra $2 an hour. It creates this loyalty. I've had guys that have been offered $5+ more an hour, which is significant, right, than what I'm giving them, that have stuck with me, even though I couldn't match that pay, because they felt like they're a part of something. And so it creates almost this loyalty, like they belong to something. And yes, it hits the bottom line. Yes, it's less money in my pocket. And one of the comments on that post, somebody said something like, this is America, like I'm going for the money or something like that. Like, I'm not doing that. Like all the money's mine or whatever. And I'm like, that's one way to do it. Look, and I'm not going to argue with anybody on one way or the other. But what I will say is this. If you go, let's say, Ricardo, so you hire somebody for your dry cleaning.
Yeah.
And you're paying them $25 an hour or something like that. And they've been working with you for a year or something like that. You've trained them. They know your systems. They know your processes. You have a relationship with them. They fit into your culture, all these kinds of things. And all of a sudden, somebody down the street offers them $2 more an hour and they bounce. And you bring somebody else in for $25 an hour. So no loss, right? Same, 25. Yeah. But now you've got to retrain, reintegrate, reculture. You got to redo all that kind of stuff. For me, I don't think that's worth it. Like the retraining, the reintegration, into the system, even figuring out if they're even an employee you want to keep, like sometimes that takes 30, 60, 90 days. Like that's just not worth it. And so for me, I'm typically going to try and pay on the higher end of the scale, maybe even above that, because I don't want to go through all that extra BS. Like, I just don't want to go through it. And so if I've got guys, and what this has done, to the PE point, what this has done is it's allowed us to grow from within, build our own people up to elevated positions. So a guy that starts off as a flagger, which would be kind of a TCT, traffic control technician, somebody on the lower side, entry level. So he's holding the stop slope paddle, right, slowing down the work and stuff like that. Somebody that starts there, we've had guys that have elevated themselves up into branch manager, right, over the course of whatever, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And that's been huge for us. And it's also huge for PE. Like, to the PE point, PE, when they go into and start looking at your people. So this is one of the things that I would talk about when it comes to PE. They're not just looking at, do you have good people? They're looking at, do you have good people? They're looking at, how long have those good people been around? Even your lower end people, how long have they been around? Do you have constant turnover? That goes a long way into telling the PE what kind of company you have and what kind of company you're buying. if you've got guys, and look, on the traffic control company, back to failures, and I can talk about my failures all day long, but on the traffic control company, we at one point, I think, had like 120% turnover rate, something crazy. Like we're turning over more people than we could hire. That doesn't look good. You're just cycling guys in and out, and that's really preventing growth. And so we shifted, we kind of did a market study, and we're like, oh man, we thought we were on the high end, but the market, this was around COVID. The market had shifted where now McDonald's is paying starting $22 an hour versus 16 prior to COVID or whatever it was, right? And so we had to massively shift kind of our pay scale. Big hit to the bottom line, all that kind of stuff. But what it did was it created longevity with our employees, and we were able to get that turnover margin from 100+% down to, I don't know, maybe 60, 70% or something like that. And so that then allowed us to grow. So
I think there's a couple of things you've indicated on this show, Jason, that indicates that you're playing chess and not checkers. You're reinvesting your money back into the asset, back into the business. Mm-hmm. You're hiring and retaining top talent, and despite paying them a little bit more, you're actually saving on the expense side. And I've experienced that same exact thing, man. From a granular level, going out to Indeed.com or putting job posts out is costly. The human capital required to interview and to vet these people is also costly. And then, hey, look, there's no guarantee that you're going to keep these people. And by the way, if you're transparent, and I know you are with your employees, they're going to know when there's a tough season and there's a lull, and maybe Jason can't pay that big of a pay increase that upcoming year, but they have been well compensated up until now. They're going to be a little more tolerant, I believe, of some of this stuff.
Yeah. Totally.
Humans are humans. And, it's so interesting you mentioned that, man. I just finished reading a book called The Private Equity Playbook. It's by Adam Coffey. Real good book. What he goes over in it is when you are selling to private equity, one of the things, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this, they're going to do due diligence on you, but you also have to do some due diligence on them as well, right? So
sure.
I think one of the things that they're going to try to look at is this org structure that Jason has fostered and cultivated, one that has the longevity enough of the people so that way I can run it with mitigated risk. Because if they have a lot of turnover, the chances of their success are probably a little lower. Whereas if all of Jason's team is still there, but Jason extracts himself and everybody else is still willing to do it, I think that they would have a little bit more success. Is there any truth to that? And based on your interactions with PE as you move through that kind of self to them?
Yeah, for sure. I'll answer that in two ways. One, as I'm continuing to look at businesses to acquire myself, right? And so after the exit 2 years ago, we've acquired, I think, 4 companies since. And I am looking for that, right? Yeah. Like I'm looking for, okay, this company. So let's say within the boomer businesses or the gray tsunami, they're calling it, right? Yeah. Within those businesses, you've got a guy that's built a company for 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. He's 65 years old. He's done. He just wants to walk away. If he walks away, does the business walk away? Does the customer client base walk away? Like how integrated is he into the success of the company? If it's the latter, if it's not, jumping to my exit, right? When I exited, there's a large portion of my core team that went with the exit, but they were like, hey, we don't actually need you, which was a little bit of a hit, right? To the pride, but genuinely you're like, you don't need me? But genuinely, like we had built, and again, to the credit of some of my partners, right, had built these teams of people that were highly capable and perfectly capable of carrying on the business, whether I was in it or not. I provided for that company maybe some high level vision, Cass, at the time of exit, right? Like I was a little more visionary, like building like, hey, let's get into this state, let's grow here. What if we did this? But I wasn't integral to the day in, day out. And so when you have PE coming in, a lot of times they have some of those players, those big high level, hey, this is where we're going. Here's the vision. This is what we're after. And so they don't necessarily need those pieces. And so I genuinely, and I've done this in a couple of my companies now, I've worked myself essentially out of a job where I'm not super needed. And that's a big thing for PE because they know they're coming in and they're buying a well-oiled machine. They don't have to come in and backfill with a manager or a COO or a CEO. They'll have their high-level guys, right? But they don't have to implant somebody into the existing operational company in order to keep it running. That's massive for them, man. That's massive.
Huge.
And I think when you really look at it, I think that affects what you're going to get on a multiple. It affects what they're going to pay you in the long term. Like it affects all those things because they know that they're buying something that literally day one is just going to print them money. That's huge.
Yeah,
all day
100%.
long.
Because they have to meet a certain requirement for their investors, right? If that money were a bullet, it's in the chamber, it's locked and loaded, right? They're ready to pull the trigger, but they need to meet a couple of requirements first. So let's go over that. When did PE first enter the picture for you? And was it you going to them or did they come to you? Because there's a, when you're at your size business, you're not going to any old broker, right? At this point, and also if you can answer, when PE first entered the picture, what type of business did Jason have in terms of revenue at this time? You had mentioned 15 to 20 mil earlier. Had it scaled up? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So 20, when would this have been? 2020 or so is when we first got approached by PE. And now, mind you, like I had no interest, like none. Like the thought of selling one of my companies, one of my babies, was not on the radar. Like,
can I ask why? Is it because cash flow was so good, or is it because you just truly enjoyed what you were doing, or you didn't think that you were ready to sell?
I would say that second one.
Okay.
I genuinely enjoy running these companies. Like I enjoy the relationships. I enjoy the employees. I enjoy building. I enjoy all that stuff. That's why, again, post-exit, right? Maybe I could have just kind of gone and sat on a beach for the rest of my life, but I enjoy what I do. Like I'm not 10 years ago, maybe the goal was retire at 45, right? And maybe I could have, but I don't, that's just not within me, man. Like I love the run. I love the chase. I love the build, all those kind of things. And so at the time that PE first started coming, 2020-ish, somewhere around there, and just saying, hey, we're interested, right? This traffic control or PE group or somebody would come and, hey, we're interested. Would you guys have a conversation? Initially, I was like, no, I don't want to talk to these guys. I don't want to sell. It just wasn't in my realm. And so probably, I don't know, we probably got hit by 5 or 6 different PE groups that I would just say, no, I'm not interested. And then I think we kind of, as an executive team, we were like, man, you know what we should do? We should actually start saying yes to these guys and let them, because most of the time they're like, hey, would you come out to our thing and see how we do stuff and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I wouldn't mind seeing, how the largest privately held traffic control company in the nation runs their operations, right? Because while I'm not playing on their 100, 200, $300 million a year ball field, I should probably learn
best
some
practices.
Yeah. And so we kind of strategized around like, man, why would we not? And so we started actually taking some of these meetings. So we'd fly out to California and meet with this big traffic control group and go through all their stuff, and they'd walk us through a billion, operation this, and this is our culture, and this is all this stuff. And it really, for us, it honestly unlocked a couple of things that I was like, oh man, we don't do that. We don't have a great HR program. We don't have a culture program. We don't have a great safety program. We don't have, we just didn't have. The companies grew so quick that some of those things that are, I would say, are almost necessary for a PE to really give you a good multiple. You grow so quick that you just push those things to the side. Like, no, we don't really have a safety program. No, we should have a, like you just culture.
It's non-revenue generating. We need to keep pressing.
It's not making me money. I'm just going to keep running.
Yeah.
And so you go out and you start seeing some of that stuff. And, we probably met with, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4. And there was probably a couple other ones that I honestly, like my partners went to, but I was like, I'm not interested. You guys go have that meeting. Like, I'm not doing it. Yeah.
Give me the clip notes.
Just give me the notes. And so that was a really interesting season because it was just something I wasn't wanting to do and whatever. But it gave us some keys that I think we implemented over the course of the next 4 years, really, until we exited, that we added to the company systems and processes and culture and HR and safety programs and all the things. Just you're buttoning up everything, right? Making it look pretty, which is what they want to see. They want to know that your stuff is dialed. Financial, especially. My gosh, man. Like when you're building a blue collar thing, like that's usually the first thing that just gets kind of shoved to the side. The wives are doing the books or whatever it is, like just not great.
Sure.
And we brought in a high level CFO. Again, I gave him a little bit of equity and he came in and just like dialed our stuff. He brought in a CPA under him. So we had an in-house CPA and our books were so dialed by the time. And mind you, that's in the midst of chaos. Like we had no intention of selling. This is probably 2023. We're literally, I've told you, I had like this traffic control company and this infrastructure company. The infrastructure company we're still running. We were in process of combining those 2 companies into one because we were like, well, let's just push all this together. They touch each other all the time anyways.
Yeah.
Let's push it all together. One tax return, one executive team, one, all this kind of stuff. We'll just merge it all. And so we're in process of doing that because we're like, we're not going to sell ever. Let's just grow this thing. And then all of a sudden the group that ended up buying us comes and they say, hey, we're really interested. And I'm like, no. They came to us, I think 3 different times. My partners met with them once. I was like, no, I'm not interested. Partners met with them again, not interested. And then they finally got me to a meeting and they're like, hey, we'll offer you a 10X on EBITDA. And I was like, that's different because, the most that I'd heard was like a 5 or a 6.
Yeah.
Or,
you're like, you have my attention.
4.
What's the catch?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It was like a 10. And I remember, man, one of my closest friends and mentors, he's a little older than me, but I called him because I was like in this moment of like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm a little scared and I don't know am I being ignorant to not even consider this? And I called him. I said, hey, man, this is the situation. They offered us blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what do I do? And he says, I'll never forget, man. It's one of those moments I can close my eyes. I can remember exactly where I was standing. I was standing on this balcony at this hotel. We were in Arizona for something. And I'm like walking, pacing, talking to him. And he says, if you have the opportunity in one moment to make more than you would in a lifetime of working that company, you have to at least consider it. That's what he said. And I was like, wait, oh my gosh, okay, I need to
you have
slow
to at
down.
least consider it. That's good. Not that you have to do it, but you should put thought into this.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. You shouldn't just brush it off. Right.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a monumental moment for me where I was like, okay, I need to pay attention to this thing, So that kind of fast forwarded into, okay, now, mind you, again, we're in the process of combining these two companies that we have. The one company, mind you, the infrastructure company, was losing like $500,000 a year, and we were pulling profits from the traffic company, which again is not good. Not good, but we're building this other vertical, right? So not good going into a sale. We're combining this stuff. Timing was bad. But like my financial team, my gosh, dude, I put them through the ringer that season. So we're combining, we're pretty much done combining. And then these guys make that offer. And then it's like, shoot, we have to pull this back apart. And so we pulled everything back apart, back to two separate companies, two separate books, all this stuff. Man, it was a nightmare. My financial team was so good during that season. But that then enabled us to basically go to this PE group who made us this offer and then start having a deeper conversation around, okay, what does this look like? Who are you guys? Who are we? Is this really we want to, all those kind of things. So crazy season.
It sounds like it. So those talks started in 2020, you said, correct?
Yeah. About 2020 was the first time that PE started coming to us. And then 2022, 2023 was the first time this specific group that acquired us came to us. And again, they met with my partners, not me, met with my partners again, not me. And then the third time, I think, is when we all got together and chatted. And that's when that kind of shifted a little bit for me.
Did PE tell you about any red flags in your business? And if so, what were they and how did you work on those over the course of that first look to a couple of years down the line? And you were astute because you had already kind of observed and were transparent about what other large successful companies are doing, which I think is genius. It's like, look, if your competitor is doing better than you, go try to learn from them, be friends with them.
100%.
I'm a huge proponent of that, man. You keep things isolated and siloed, you're missing out on the opportunity to learn from somebody else who, let's be honest, we have no illusions that we're the smartest people in the room, get in that smart room, right? But so did they offer you any observations regarding red flags that they saw with your business? If so, what were they and how'd you work on them?
Yeah. So they initially, no, absolutely not. I mean, these guys they're buying up. This is a massive PE group. I mean, the largest traffic control company in the nation.
Pockets.
I think, they did over $1 billion last year. Like they're big. And they're buying probably 10 plus companies a year. And so they do this for a living, right? Like I was walking into the lion's den when we entered into these negotiations. I'm this little prey, man. Like they're looking at me like licking their lips, like, oh, we're going to eat this guy alive. And again, it's just because you don't know. And that's where I think like what you guys are doing and even putting this podcast out there, it's like, like have these conversations because these guys are the top dogs. Like they know all the ins and outs. They know the tricks. And even when I look back at it now, there's these moments that happened throughout the exit because it took almost a year to go through the whole. Initially, it was supposed to take 4 months and it took almost a whole year to get through the whole thing. But I look back now and there was these moments that they knew were coming. Like there's no illusion in my mind anymore. It's like they knew that we would hit this point where we would have to show this, or they would ask this question, or they would, or whatever. And all of a sudden our EBITDA just dropped, or all of a sudden they want to re-talk about the multiple, or all that, right? Like they just know, man, because this is what they do for a living. They are professional at acquiring companies, right? And we're the new dogs on the block. We have no clue what's going on. I'd never sold a company.
Your first transaction to them,
First, 100%, right? I mean, even the companies now that we're scaling, like I feel like we're scaling those companies now to exit because now I understand that realm and I understand how powerful it can be to multiply your efforts. And so now walking into like, oh, okay, now I know what I should do here to get this to there. I know what I need to do there to get this to here. Like I know the game plan a little bit more, not fully, right? But I've watched it come through and I've watched kind of I wouldn't call them tricks, but just there's these things that they just know more than you do. So
100%. So you ended up with a multiple that was very, very satisfying, decent, very decent 8-figure exit. Was it your buddies and your mentors' comments that kind of stuck with you, with your family for a while that, you probably said, hey, look, what does chapter 2 look like? I could do this at this age and still keep running and still keep doing my thing.
Yeah. It definitely like awakened my mind to like, I need to consider this. I need to walk down this path. Again, it wasn't something that I felt like I had to jump into, but I at least needed to hear it out, walk it through, figure out what does this actually look like? What could this turn into? All those kind of things. It definitely opened my eyes into all of that. And again, I had all these other companies that I still had, right? At the time, I think we had 16 or so companies that we had, holding companies, things like that too, but real estate and all these other operational blue collar type businesses. And so it wasn't like I was walking away from this one thing and I had nothing to do.
Got it.
But this was
You were
definitely
still
my
diversified.
main. Yeah, I was still diversified, but this was definitely my main thing. And so to walk through the thought of almost giving up your baby, right? I was employee number one on this thing, right? And so walking that whole thing through, it was a hard kind of process just to go through it and think about letting it go and all those things. So
to what extent can you negotiate with PE for the second bite of that apple, if you know what I'm referring to? I know in this case, they said, we'll do it without you. Could you have rebutted that and said, I still want to stay on for X salary? Is that something that PE entertains in negotiation for you to then get an equity portion on the backside as well?
Yeah. So multiple ways. One, we had an opportunity to leave money in the parent company.
Got it.
They basically gave us, hey, if you want to leave, 10% of your, exit into the parent company, we allow that. And my one partner did do that. And I think it'll be great for him. As kind of the whole process worked its way out, there was seasons of it where I was like, I got bitter. I was just like, man, I don't know that I want to really be that involved in this thing,
If I'm done, I'm done.
Probably. Yeah. And so, but yes, I think there definitely is. I mean, two of my main partners in that company that we exited stayed on, and they got their exit and they still have a salary, benefits, bonus, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
The second bite of the apple thing is really interesting. It's a concept that I, again, didn't fully understand how it worked or what it looked like, but I do like that concept. And it's something that with some of the companies that we're now scaling, we're talking about, because the idea that I could bring in PE, sell maybe 49% or 30% or whatever it is, maintain majority, get a capital infusion, both as an exit as well as maybe a capital infusion into growth, and then have, run it for another like 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, and then have a second exit with basically them funding that growth. That's super interesting. And that is something that not every PE group will entertain. To me, at least what I've heard and what I've seen is it's typically PE groups that are looking for a platform. And by platform, I mean a big family office, PE group. They have a bunch of different companies, but they don't have traffic control at all. No traffic control companies at all, but they want to get in the traffic control space. And so they're coming in and they're acquiring you to be their platform. You are our traffic control company within our family, our PE group, right? You're going to continue running under your name, probably. You're going to continue, like you will be their traffic control piece. And then they're going to take more money and probably acquire more traffic control companies. And that's going to roll under this platform. PE companies, that seems like that's one of the main reasons they do like a second bite of the apple type scenario. And again, like, I think it's a great way to go. If you can build something with not just your money, but have the backing of somebody that's highly interested in your growth, right? I mean, again, they're trying to provide returns for their investors. The only negatives I've heard to some of that stuff is once they own a piece, they are in your business. Like they are, I mean, you're giving reports, you're giving updates, you're answering to high level dudes that want to understand why you spent $10 on Carl Jr. or something like that, right? Like they're in all of it.
What you asked for there.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to be aware that there's certain covenants and stuff that comes with that type of relationship. And again, if your stuff is dialed and it's no big deal, then it's great. But yeah.
Did you misstep any in your process of selling to PE? And if so, what would you have done differently there?
Yeah. So yes. For sure, there was missteps. Again, it was the first time, right? And so there's just lessons. I think if we were to do it over again, we probably would have delayed a little bit longer because, again, we were literally just coming out of that combining and then reseparation. We had dumped profits from this over into this, which again doesn't look good on an EBITDA side. They want to see 3 years minimum of good books. And because of that whole thing, it was messy. We weren't in the ideal scenario to exit. We look at it now, and if we would have run another 6 months to a year, we would have probably been closer to that 9-figure exit, which you go, it's like, oh man, but it's a great experience, great lessons. Now we know moving forward, we still had a phenomenal exit, super blessed, like all the things. But yeah, there's things like that you look at and go, man, that's a bummer we didn't do that. And the other stuff, what else with the PE specifically? I mean, most of the other stuff went pretty well, man. Like
Yeah.
it was, our books were
All things
tight. Thank
considered.
God for, yeah, all those things. So it was really cool.
You know, you mentioned something as we wrap up here in a moment, Jason, that strikes me as very, very fascinating, but that is also an understanding of, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs. And that is that the reason for success in the entrepreneurial space is not because of the destination. It's because you like the race. It's because you love the race. You just so happen to
Yeah.
enjoy the destination and the
Uh-huh.
finish line. So though
Yeah.
you did exit and you made out in a generous manner, how does that change? So now I understand you deployed a lot of that capital very quickly. What
Mhm.
does your buy box and your appetite look like right now? And are you de-risking in doing this, or are you actually still bullish in how you deploy your capital?
Yeah, great question. So I redeployed almost like 90 something percent within 30 days, which is
You had the
another,
itch.
yeah, I wouldn't say that's the best thing to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Like just, full disclosure.
Get it away
right?
from me. Get it away from me.
And part of it, look, man, part of it for me was like I told you, like I had never operated with money.
Yeah.
Like just to be fully
Yeah,
transparent,
You
and
kept putting it
like
back in the
I
business.
had never ever operated with excess. Like it was always, paycheck to paycheck, not entirely, but close
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden there's more than I ever thought I would have in my entire lifetime. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Let's just put it back in, right? Put it all back on black.
Yeah.
And
What's worked
so,
for you? Yeah.
yeah. And so I think there's that piece of it. The other part of it for me was we did diversify a little bit more. I mean, we spent a good amount of time, and this might be for podcast 2.0 or something like that, but
Yeah.
we spent a ton of time with planning, like estate planning and setting up trusts and family foundations and nonprofits and just those kind of things. And so really spread some things out to kind of protect taxes and long-term gifts and estates and stuff like that. And then when we did invest in businesses or reinvest, I did diversify a little bit more than I traditionally had. So I'd had some commercial real estate. I went a little further into that. I didn't have really almost any passive investments, if I'm just being transparent. All of my stuff was in operating companies. So we put a little bit into some passive stuff. I'm not huge on stocks and things like that. I need to, that's one thing I need to grow in. And then I put some into some startup businesses. And then I've got a bunch of stuff down in the VI that we started kind of working, the US Virgin Islands that we started working on down there business wise. So I diversified a little bit more, I would say, but I'm still, more heavy than my financial advisor would want me to be, but I'm still pretty heavy in the blue collar, like operational space. So
I love that. And now you have the other side of having done a transaction with private equity. So now that you kind of see a little bit of their playbook, are you looking for perhaps a business operators? Are you interested in funding a venture that will grow commensurate with perhaps your businesses have grown?
Yeah, for sure. I'm constantly looking for, like we've talked about, good people. I pretty much about a year and a half ago, I felt like I was supposed to just in any way, if somebody introduced me to somebody or said, hey, you need to meet with blah, I would pretty much 100% of the time say yes, because I am constantly looking for those higher level people. So somebody that had kind of an exit or a golden parachute, they worked for some company for a long time, they gave them a crazy retirement exit plan, but they're not old enough to retire. They're still looking for the next thing. Like I love those conversations. I love having those meetings. So I have a list of, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 guys, and two of them I redeployed into 2 of the 4 companies that we acquired last year. So those were companies that the owner was leaving and there was going to be a hole in the company. And so I, called up one of these guys, hey, I have potential slot. Yeah. And so slid them in. So that's been huge. And then for businesses in general, I'm constantly looking. We're probably looking at 1 to 2 businesses a month. I'm a little more selective in ones that I'm going to jump into. I need to see upside. I need to see maybe an ownership group that really wants to grow and wants to run, somebody that doesn't just want like a little bit of capital and wants to, just be lazy.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little more selective. So we've probably looked at, 24 different companies over the last year and a half since the exit, or a little over a year. And like I said, we've acquired 4. There's about 3 other ones that we're looking at potentially investing in right now. But I love business, man. I think there's a certain level of, I've been in business now for 20 or so years. There's a certain level of, and I would have never thought this about myself, but there's a certain level of things that I've gone through that can help, especially younger guys, elevate into like that next level. And so even like what you guys do with the Blue Collar Millionaire, like getting people in the room together, older people, younger people, guys that have had exits, guys that are trying to find exits, like all that stuff is so powerful. And that's why I wanted to come on and do this with you guys, because it's like, man, it's so important to get yourself around other people that are doing it, other people that are trying to get there, and then learn and just grow. And if you're willing to do that, man, like there's so much upside. So much
There's
upside.
so much. Everybody else is very distracted right now. There's wealth to be generated, there's purpose to be had, and impact to be made. All right, man, let's end it with a quick rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. So rapid fire here.
Yeah.
One habit that made the biggest difference in your career as you scaled.
Yeah, for me, man, this is gonna sound bougie maybe, but like personal time. I would never spend time like on myself. And I've now gotten, and even towards the end of that exit, like I got really strict around like, hey, this is my time. So now I get up in the morning at like, 5:30 or so, and I'm in the sauna, I'm in the cold plunge, I'm working out, I'm going on a run, I'm reading my Bible, I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm taking care of me. That has been massive for me personally, because I think as you start building this stuff, it's really normal to put yourself last and just run. And I got to a place where almost like mentally and stuff like that, I felt foggy and I couldn't like get out of this funk. And when I started prioritizing, so now I don't schedule any meetings before about 8 a.m. personally. And not everybody can do that, but like I have a 2.5 hour time slot that's like, hey, this is me. And most of the time my family sleeps through the whole thing. Like it is me, right?
It's
and
your
I'm taking
time.
care of me. Yeah.
Yep.
That's been huge for me, honestly.
Okay. Awesome. One belief you had early on that turned out to be wrong.
I would probably say that I had to do it on my own. I think there's this like, I'm a man. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it all by myself. I'm going to build the company. I'm going to do the books. I'm going to do this. I'm going to scale. I'm going to, and it's all on me. Yeah. I did that for a long time. And I just got to tell you, like, it's lonely. Like I didn't have anybody around me. If I'd talk to people and say, yeah, I've got, 5 or 6, 7, 8 different companies or whatever, they would think I was crazy. And getting around people and then bringing in partners or high level guys, not that you have to give up equity all the time, but bringing in people around you that you can run with, it's like a massive multiplication. It's taking myself and I'm doubling it, tripling it, right? That has been so big for me. And knowing that I don't have to do it on my own. Sometimes it feels right. Like I don't want to delegate everything, but there's a certain level of like, man, if I can bring somebody in that's better at me than in finance, better at me in sales, better at me in HR culture, better at me. If I can surround myself with those people that are better than I am, man, it's so much easier to scale a company.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that not a lot of folks talk about, but it does get lonely at the top. So when you have someone else to talk about these issues that we're going through, and then let's look at the financial side too, right? Like, this is a belief that a lot of very small business owners have, is that they want 100% of the grape, but you could actually have 10% of the watermelon and you have more. And then, as you alluded to, you commiserate based on certain things, you brainstorm, you come up with more strategic, precise solutions for the problem set together. So long as you can get past group consensus and challenges of partnerships, because we didn't talk on that for this episode, and maybe we'll for a future one, because trust me, people are going to cause you the majority of the problems as well, probably not equipment, but
100%.
I love that. I love that.
Partnerships are hard, man.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Well, listen, Jason, I want to thank you so much, man, for coming on the show today. I feel like this episode is going to give viewers and listeners a tremendous amount of value as they look to try to scale their businesses. If you don't mind, how can listeners get a hold of you? Can they reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. So, as we talked about kind of at the beginning, I've recently stepped into social media a little bit more. It's been something that I'm like, man, I don't want to just go there, but it's definitely actually from the Atlanta thing, talking with Chris and Kevin and some of the guys, talking with you and Mariana. It's like, man, I got to put myself out there a little bit. So we jumped into that back in December. So it's fairly new, but Blue Collar Bowen is kind of the handles on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. And so you can find Blue Collar Bowen at Blue Collar Bowen or Jason Bowen on pretty much all those. That's the easiest way to reach out. You can DM, reach out, and we're posting stuff on a fairly regular basis, just on business and exits and PE and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun. We're going to try and do a little more videos and just share stuff like this. And so I really appreciate Blue Collar Millionaire and you guys having me on and just having the experience. It was great to go through that. Yeah. The other piece is our kind of the impact side for us. So we have Impact Legacy, which is kind of our nonprofit that we set up. It's focusing on youth and the fatherless and really just kind of like that give back piece. So one of the things walking into an exit, for me at least, it forced me to think beyond the profit. So kind of the concept of like purpose beyond profit. And so as you work towards, hey, I've got all this money coming, my question would be like, unto what? Like, what's the point? Like, is it just for the Ferrari or the yacht or the private plane or whatever? Or is there something beyond that? And so for me, I've always had a real heart for like youth and the fatherless and kind of that give back piece. And so really building out kind of a network where if guys want to start exploring like, man, how can I make an impact in the world around me? Whether it be with youth or the fatherless or sex trafficking or whatever it might be. Like, we're trying to build kind of a network of opportunity where if you want to learn about how you might be able to give into something that touches your heart, you can do that. And so Impact Legacy is the other piece, and we're creating a website and all that stuff. So that's kind of in the process. So.
I love that, man. We'll add any links to the show notes, Jason. I can tell you,
Great.
man, that community of entrepreneurs that achieve a certain level of success, unfortunately, in many respects, is riddled with a lot of folks that get the lifestyle creep and that start to act and to perform in a different manner. I'm not saying everyone, and this is a generalization, I know you know this, but to meet someone that is still down to earth, to meet someone who's willing to spend their time when you know that an hour of your time or someone else's time is very valuable, means a lot, man. That doesn't go unnoticed. And so I want to thank you for your time. And I think what you're working on and how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And it's just like you said, the money is not going to solve all the issues. In fact, when it's impactful, meaningful, and foundational, you need something of more purpose and more impact. So I'll be sure to blast that out. And even if it's not completely stood up yet, Jason, we're going to continue to propagate what you're working on, man. We're very proud of your success. Thank you again for your time, brother. I really appreciate it today.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, Jason.
Blue Collar.